Afternoon, everyone. This is the 5th webinar of the series that we've been holding in association with American Center and their student exchange program, along with the films that are being released, screened every Friday. So today's topic of our webinar is cyberstalking. And I have my colleagues with me here, Fakira, Rajat, Meha, and Saga. So I'll give you a structure of the webinar today. My colleagues are going to talk about basically, first we'll give you a little bit of context about cyberstalking, what it really arises, and how it relates to sexism, and not just online, but also offline, and how the online and offline spaces come together, and what are the differences or not for that matter. Then we're going to discuss about what kinds of stalking, cyberstalking are there, and if it exists, how and how, if you face cyberstalking, how you're going to deal with this. Types of cyberstalking, for example, revenge porn. Then we're going to talk a little bit about law and what are the laws that exist to protect us for cyberstalking in India. And then how we'll move a little deeper into the avoidance of cyberstalking. If you are being stalked, what kind of measures that you can take. So that's just the structure of today's webinar. And I'm going to give a little context and a little background of how cyberstalking arises. So we believe that basically whatever kinds of threats and violations, harassment that happens online also happens offline. And more often than not, the sort of inequalities and unjust factors that sort of affect human rights violations and cause human rights violations of people, especially vulnerable people, they just extend to online spaces as well. So I would say I would like to just sort of highlight the fact that a major reason or a factor that leads to cyberstalking towards women. So we are going to focus our webinar on women being cyberstalked, basically. So the cyberstalking that happens in that majorly affects women, especially young women online. The reason for that would be basic misogyny towards women, basic fact that men sort of see this as an avenue to again go on about how you can harass and suppress women and sort of assert power or domination over them. So for men, as we can discuss more about history and how it arises, is basically a very simple fact that men try and measure their power by controlling and suppressing. And in history, and if we talk about feminism and how we see men controlling women's body and sexuality, it's sort of the same factors that lead to cyberstalking also taking place online. So that also leads to the fact that more and more women who sort of take a stand, who express their opinions, who express their sexuality, and online is sort of not tolerated by men. So the major point that I'm trying to highlight is it's not a general thing. It's not that men are not affected by cyberstalking, or it's only the men who stalk, but there are women stalkers as well. But majorly the point that I'm trying to make is that the victims are young women, and the stalkers, the perpetrators of cyberstalking are men. And the reason for that is general hatred towards women and not being tolerant towards women taking a stand or sort of competing with men in all areas. Also, the kind of experiences that women face are very sexual in nature. The threats that they face online through cyberstalking. Cyberstalking is another threat, but other kind of threats that women face online are very sexual in nature, and they are always aimed at harming their dignity regarding this fact. And I've already discussed with you about how online and offline spaces don't make much of a difference. In fact, the nature of internet, the nature of digital communications today sort of gives an avenue, a space or a platform stalkers or for perpetrators of these kind of human rights violations to it basically makes it easier for them to sort of engage with such activities because they don't have geographical restrictions, and also the fact that they can be anonymous. When they're doing it, nobody can catch them. Maybe after, but not when they're engaging in such activities. So and this also then makes people who are accessing digital communications difficult, and it makes them more vulnerable to such threats. So this is a basic idea that we'll sort of base our next 1 hour discussion on. And now I'll ask my colleague Meha to sort of talk a little more about, a little deeper about how online and offline spaces converge when it comes to threats like cyber stalking against women.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Meha, you are.
Thank you, Shivani. So I would, as Shivani talked about threats, like they are sexual in nature, so I would like to substantiate it with a few examples. Like around 8 days back, on the 20th of September, a girl who was walking down to her school was stalked and was stabbed. So she had got around 22 stab wounds in her body, and she died on the spot. And this happened in order to take revenge because she had filed a complaint. So similar thing happened in 2014 when a 17-year-old girl who wanted to become a nurse lodged a complaint against her former classmates who used to harass her and stalk her, and she was burnt alive after she registered a complaint. And a very known case that happened in 2011 when a girl was shot dead by a stalker outside Ramlal College of Delhi University. So her parents registered a case around 3 years back. He absconded for 3 years. And he came back in order to take revenge, and the girl was shot dead. So I would just like to define what stalking and cyber stalking is and how they are interrelated. So stalking or being followed is quite common in our country, rather worldwide. And if you're stalked online over the internet, that is cyber stalking. So cyber stalking can lead to offline stalking, and offline stalking can lead to online stalking. So a friend of mine would like to share her experience over the same.
Hello? Hello? No, there's no response. Hello? Yeah. So it was a while when I was in college, and we used to hang out in a very common place. So like here we're talking about stalking and how offline stalking and online stalking are interrelated. So I think this very well defines it. So we used to sit in a group of friends, and there was a lot of boys, a group of 3 boys who used to follow us everywhere. So initially they used to be in college only. Then they started out of college when I was going home. So and then eventually that stalker actually started stalking me on Facebook. But I think there's certain Facebook thing that just he wasn't able to message me directly. So that message wasn't coming directly to my inbox. So I think these offline stalking sometimes just leads to online stalking, and the similar goes vice versa. So I think the cyber stalking is something like fortunately nothing bad happened with me, but I think that was because you just don't know what is the intentions of that stalker is. So I think that's what I wanted to put as my excuse. So now we're moving on.
Yeah, so I would also like to take an example of cyberbullying, which happened with Kavita Krishnan, a famous feminist and also a secretary of All India Progressive Women's Association. After this whole, after imprisonment of the JNU president Kanhaiya, so Kavita Krishnan posted an article on Facebook called JNU Dozier. And immediately after that, she started getting abusive comments. And one of the comments I would like to highlight was, ask your mother, daughter, if they had free sex. To which she very vehemently replied, yes, my mother did. Hopefully so did yours. Because if the women is not free, it is not sex but rape. But the point is that if you counter, you'll get more similar comments. It's not that you're forgiving if you're replying, if you're taking step. But what if you do not take step? And a lot of other JNU students, particularly girls who posted their views regarding in support of Kanhaiya, got similar messages, abusive messages, messages of threatening messages that they can be raped if they do not stop posting similar comments. And one of my friends who's pursuing her doctorate from JNU was in fact from Facebook it led to a physical stalking. A group of guys they started stalking her till metro station and things like that. The point is that the point is that in the three initial cases which I described, in which they went they went to the police and took action, so they were all killed. So the point is that if you're taking action, you're being killed. And if you're not taking action, see, it's very difficult to live with trauma which you're subjected to by these stalkers. So, and why did this happen? Why somebody needs to stalk you? It's about their psyche. What I could understand is that it's all about power relationship. Since we are living in a patriarchal society, the social order we live in is patriarchal in nature. So each and every girl is being socialized in a way. They are socialized to behave stoically, to be docile, to be submissive. And so I personally feel that I don't know what's the solution. I do not know what's the solution for this problem. But I personally feel that one should report to these problems and take some actions. Over to you, Shivani.
Thank you, Meha, for giving us so many examples and talking about how we should actually talk more and more about it. And I wanted to highlight that fact that we are conditioned to be silent when something happens with us, and we are told that it's not a solution to talk about something. So that's also a part of the structure that we live in, and it sort of reinforces the fact that it reinforces and gives more power to the oppressor, basically. So I would really like to highlight the fact that we should talk more and more about it. More stories should come out, and we should not silence others. We should not silence ourselves. We should not tell people that this happened and it's okay and you shouldn't talk about it. So that's a very important point you highlighted over there, and thank you for that. Also, the point that you said that a lot of times when cyber stalking or other kinds of threats take place online, they often move into offline spaces, and very physical threats are evidently happening in today's time. So we'll talk more about what are the provisions and mechanisms you can take to protect yourself, or where you can go if you face such kind of threats. So, but before we go into that, I'll ask Sagar to maybe highlight other ways in which cyber stalkers engage in such activities, and what other kinds of cyber stalking are there. How do you recognize that you're being cyber stalked? So, Sagar, over to you.
Thank you, Shivani. Thank you, Meha. Both of you have raised a very valid points. So, as just Shivani so which means we're quite clear that
your mic went offline. Your mic's back. Okay, it's back.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Shivani. Thank you, Meha. You have raised really valid points that in this 21st century we are still cyber stalked. But before we go ahead, we really need to understand the forms of this stalking. So there is basically two kinds. One is traditional stalking, and another one is cyber stalking, definitely. But in traditional stalking, basically the offender knows the victim a lot, so which actually creates for the state forces to catch these offenders. But when you are discussing about cyber stalking, most of the time these offenders are living in different geographical proximities. And since, as I recall about these harassments that is happening to the people, I can definitely say this is not what you want to do. So we need to understand in the types of different forms and formats these are coming. So you can basically categorize in the spaces that are used for cyber stalking, which includes Facebook, YouTube, Twitter also, or just spamming people, and also the form of cyber stalkers who are there. So like basically 4 categories, which includes vindictive, collective, composed, and intimate cyber stalkers. So if I quickly run through these vindictive cyber stalkers, these are the people who are particularly malicious and harass victims far more often than the other 3 groups through excessive spamming, emailing and bombing, and identity theft. They also try to access the victim's computer, and surprisingly but truly, they have very mid to high range of computer IT skills and try to threaten the victims. If you again go to this composed one, they target victims in a calm and composed manner, and the main purpose is to create constant distress for the victims through variety of threats and behaviors. But the most dangerous one that I personally feel is the intimate cyber stalkers, because this can be further categorized into 3 more categories, subcategories, which is like obsessional, delusional, and also personal relationship. This basically arises with 2 ways. Maybe it's just because of the offender's infatuation towards the victim, or it's just having their previous relationship, but right now they are maybe going through a psychological disease or not, but they want to just stalk them. Collective cyber stalking consists of, as the word says, 2 or more individuals pursuing the same victim, and they have high level of computer and IT skills to do that. At the same time, these guys not only make the cyber stalking through direct communication, but they also use indirect communication, which means either they put head blocks where they can stalk you, because cases have also arisen in the manner where there was no direct communication, but just because there were written head blocks regarding these people, their careers have completely gone away, completely demolished. So this is a kind of very dangerous stuff. So these victims also come into 3 groups, like you can be stalked by a stranger, or followed by acquaintances, or any ex-intimates. The activities can also look like talking over online accounts through guessing in victims' password details. So these are some of the categories I'm just reflecting, like, or setting up websites about the victim and publishing damaging information, which comes under the collective cyber stalking, or just launching false profiles and social media sites. And again, I would like to again recall what Meha and Shivani shared regarding revenge porn, because these stalkers, since they do not have any sense of humanity, they keep on sexually abuse the people. One particularly serious problem is that posed by the spyware. This is where malicious software is installed onto the victim's phone or computer, and the data is then accessed without their knowledge. Sometimes the computer device camera may be controlled by the stalker to spy into the victim's own private space. So guys, this is really a serious case, and we need to combat it. I would like my colleagues to further elaborate on this issue. And over to me.
Thank you, Saga, for pointing out these different kinds of stalking that takes place, and thank you for telling us more about the most dangerous kind of cyber stalking, which is intimate partners stalking their previous partners, and it can also arise from the fact that this can also be called intimate partner violence, and so how it really moves from offline space to online, and it carries on there. And so basically a woman, if she's facing something like that, she really has she doesn't have a place where she can safely escape to. And that's a very, very dangerous thing that you've pointed out there. And I would like to talk a little about how it really affects a victim. It really causes a lot of trauma on a psychological level, on a physical level, and the fact that what they're actually trying to achieve is create an environment of hostility and to intimidate them, basically. And it does really work. It really intimidates a woman, and it discourages her from further either talking about it or doing the same things that she has been doing online. For example, just exercising freedom of expression, accessing any websites, or taking part in social media in her normal life. So apart from and humiliation, among other things. So thank you, Sagar, for that. And to sort of move into a little deeper into one of the other types of cyber stalking, and which is rampant these days, and people are working really hard to find a solution to this, but it's not really working out, is the issue of revenge porn. And I would like Rajat to talk to us a little about revenge porn and what really does it mean and how it happens and what are the problems that it results in. So Rajat, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Shivani. So, revenge porn, and Shivani and I were talking about this just yesterday, is a bit of a misnomer because it does not necessarily constitute porn in the more traditional sense. However, it still is quite an insidious little tactic that is used. Now, essentially what revenge porn is, for individuals who may not know, is when when a person uploads photographs or videos of an individual that they were intimate with, their partner, without their consent, without the partner's consent. And it has ramifications across the board. Of course, it's a major violation of privacy right off the bat, because you've got a place where an individual, and let's not beat around the bush, most of the times the victims of revenge porn are women. You've got these women who are not, then they don't have a choice on where their photographs go, and particularly intimate photographs. Now, what's very interesting is there was a small segment done on revenge porn a couple of months ago by this comedian John Oliver, who has a show called Last Week Tonight. I highly recommend anyone watching this. But that particular segment, there was one very interesting thing that was highlighted, and I checked up on it, and it's actually true. The only way sometimes available for the victims of revenge porn is to copyright their body, meaning that any individual without prior permission would then be subject to, civil law of copyright law. However, what's very, and this is probably the more twisted sort of irony over here, is that to copyright images of your body, you have to send naked images of your body to the people in the copyright office. And that I find is preposterous, that in this day and age, we live in a world where if a woman has to enforce just the moral and ethical high ground, saying that it's my body, I should choose where photographs of my body go, they have to send naked photographs of themselves to the copyright office. And it's completely ridiculous. There have also been cases, and it really started up, revenge porn really started up and gained a lot of traction about a year and a half to 2 years ago, when there was a massive surge in the number of reports surrounding revenge porn, where individuals, even girls as young as 15 or 14, their photos had been uploaded online by boys that they were sexting or sending photos on Instagram or Snapchat or however have you. So it really gained a lot of traction then, because there was some very, very high profile suicides by some of the victims. There was, of course, court cases across the board, and very, very famously, one of the biggest channels for revenge porn on the internet was actually shut down, and the person running it had to pay a massive court settlement fee. But the problem is not really that one person who was running that site. Yes, of course, he is part of the problem, but he's not necessarily the problem. He enabled individuals to take photos. Now, sharing photos and sending photos of oneself, I believe, is absolutely fine. I think it's a moral, it's an individual choice that people are completely at liberty to take, whether they want their significant other to have, or friend or whoever, or person that they're corresponding with, to have intimate photos of them. But there is a strong influence of this sort of misogynistic and patriarchal approach or to revenge itself, that the best way to sort of hurt a woman is to sort of destroy her sexuality and attack her sexuality as a woman. And that, I think, is quite an insidious thing, because it not only lends to pointing out an issue at sort of the individual level, but it also highlights a broader issue at the societal level, where it is still something that we consider. And some of the responses that these women have received when they have gone to complain about such photographs being available online is by the police is saying, well, don't upload it, don't send photos of yourself, switch off the internet and it'll go away. And I think this switch off the internet and it'll go away applies to any of the issues around stalking. But how can you do that? How can you switch off the internet? We live in the information society, the internet mediated world. It's something that is intrinsically a part of us, unless you're a farmer, but even then it's still, the importance is rising. So revenge porn is something that in India has not really gained a lot of traction legally, because there is, at least to my knowledge, has not gained so much traction legally, because there is still a tremendous stigma with the reporting of such crimes, and which you find replicated in the reports of rapes. However, thankfully, that is now slowly changing. It's not as fast as we'd like it to be, but it is changing. It is improving. You have this also in terms of the reporting of cases of molestation, eve teasing, and so on and so forth. So it is low. I just hope that as the law, as the enforcers, the police, as well as us as a society and us as individuals sort of mature and gain a better understanding of the ramifications of what the internet really does, I think that's where we'll be able to combat an issue such as this much more effectively. Shivani, back to you.
Thank you so much, Rajat, and you've highlighted this interesting point about the copyright issue, and then also again the fact that when you go to the police, or you talk to anybody for that matter about an issue like this, what happens really is that you're asked to basically self-censor yourself. So this again points to the fact that we were discussing much earlier before we started, is that every structure that really exists out there reinforces the power relations that we were just talking about, and reinforces the fact that there is really no way for you to maybe come out of these problems and just suppress further, because you're asked to maybe not do something. Instead of, if you're a victim, instead of doing it the other way around, you're asked to stop engaging in such things, instead of saying that you should go ahead, but there should be mechanisms that should exist which will curb this instead of this. And basically the fact, and I wanted to discuss another thing, which is I'm not so sure if it really relates to cyber stalking, but the fact about videos being shared online. So there's an interesting issue which is also arising these days, is that videos of actual rapes are being circulated online. Now, the interesting thing there is that these videos are circulated to actually blackmail the victim, silence the victim, and telling her not to speak out against this, basically because, oh, if you do this, I'll circulate this and I'll share it with other people. Now, the interesting thing is that woman does not even have access to internet. This woman does not even know that she's being harassed like this, and her images and her videos are being shared online by these people. And this is, I don't think it really counts as revenge porn, but it's the other way around. Basically, the fact that you rape somebody and you shoot it without their consent, and then you share it online to blackmail them, to silence them. and to basically harass them, and so that the story doesn't come out and nobody talks about it. But uh, despite that, the videos are shared. They tell the woman that we'll do this if you come, go to somebody and talk about it, but they still end up doing it. So it's an important issue that I think needs to be highlighted, and it's not really a revenge porn or a video being shared by an intimate partner of yours. So just that. Uh, Now, before we move into other sections, I would like to ask Fakira to give us a little bit of an introduction to law scenario regarding cyber stalking in India right now. So, Fakira.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk about the scenario of cyber stalking in India right now. So, before going into what is actually happening, we also need to have a hindsight about what was happening previously and how stalking was being dealt in India. Now, it's very important, and further to illustrate what Shivani said, not just rape victims' videos are circulated, these videos are in demand in India, which is very shocking and appalling. A recent news survey which said that somewhere around Orissa, a woman was gang raped and her video was taken and it was circulated, and people were actually paying for such stuff. People were actually paying for a woman being gang raped. So that actually tells you a lot about the audiences and the people you are living with. So now you have this internet where women are openly expressing themselves, which is very natural through mediums of pictures, videos, and they are being attacked there. And that attacking, that monitoring, and that constant nudge and reminder that you are just a body and your parts will be picturized into random things, and all that a man can do to you is rape you, and whatever you are, whatever you've achieved will make nothing or mean nothing, and the society will shame you, which is not wrong because that's what the society does. So getting back to the law scenario, stalking was not like in around in 2008 when internet was a thing and we had a good amount of users online. Offline also, stalking was never described in the IPC as a section. It was always dealt as an intrusion to somebody's privacy. So the two sections that dealt with stalking are Section 72 of the Indian Penal Code, also the Section 72A of the Indian Penal Code. It is important to remember that this law got amended in 2008. The Information Technology Act, which started in 2000, got amended in 2008 because to put the stalking in between. So for a good amount of 8 years, you had no law targeting stalking. It does not mean that there was no stalking happening. It was. It was just not reported or talked about. And even in the 2008 amendment, no major contentions for stalking were put on, but it was not even named. It was taken as an intrusive to somebody's privacy. So here we had the legislative bodies not even accepting till 2008 that stalking was a thing, that women could be stalked and it could be harmful, and it was not something that you should forget about, or it was not a boy thing to do. It was a serious criminal offense that needed to be taken charge to. So let me talk about Section 72 and 72A. So 72 said that if you would take somebody's pictures and whatever documents and circulate them without their permission, that would lead to stalking, or defame them, or without the consent of the teacher, or disclose some of the electronic record register information, that could lead to an imprisonment of 2 years and with a fine which might extend to 1 lakh rupees. And the same thing with 72A said that the intermediaries, if they used any private information of a person without their consent, they could be punished for an amount of 5 lakh rupees and a 3 years imprisonment. However, these two 72 and 72A were read with Section 441 of the IPC, which deals with offences related to criminal trespass. which actually the section 441A, which is read with 72 and 72A, means whoever enters into or upon property in the possession of another with intent to commit an offense or to intimidate, insult, or annoy any person in possession of such property, or having lawfully entered into or upon such property unlawfully remains there with intent thereby to intimidate, insult, or annoy any such person, or with an intent to commit an offense, is said to commit criminal trespass. So cyber stalking was in contents to a criminal trespass of a product, of a property. It was looked as a criminal trespass. Again, I'm putting a stress here is to make the audience understand that you are in 2008, the internet is there, the stalking is happening offline also, yet the legislative is very reluctant to even word out stalking for us in the IPC or create a different section. You have still rapes happening, you have still women being followed, yet the government is so reluctant to just provide a section for it. It just makes you read it with criminal trespass, which makes no sense. So yeah, and also if cyber stalking was done only to annoy the victim and did not result into serious offenses like defamation, sexual crime, identity theft, or grave crimes like terrorism, it would be a bailable offense. That means the person would get a bail for it. Otherwise, stalking normally around, across the globe is a very serious and a non-bailable offense. For the court and the person to prove that the stalking did not result into a serious crime is an entire different thing which would take ages to deliberate upon. So I would like to jump to 2012. We come from a country where we wait for a crime to happen for us to establish a law for it. We need an example for it to happen so that we can have a law for it. It is a very old criminology theory which states that if a person can throw stones at a window, by not repairing the window, you're not deterring that person. You're just inviting him to further commit some more crimes like bulgari or whatever, or trespass your property. If he has the audacity to hold a stone and throw it at your window, that is the point you need to put grills on that window and safe and secure yourself. But that's not what happened. So in December 2012, the gang rape incident, which took India by the storm, resulted in finally the Indian government to take several initiatives to review the existing criminal laws. A special committee under Justice Verma was formed for this purpose, and basing upon the report of the committee, several new laws were introduced. In this course, anti-stalking law was also introduced. The Criminal Law Amendment Ordinance 2013, Section 354D to the Indian Penal Code to define and punish the act of stalking. The law, I will read it out to you. Whoever follows a person or contacts or attempts to contact such person to foster personal interaction repeatedly despite a clear indication of disinterest by such person, or whoever monitors the use by a person of the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication, or watches or spies a person in a manner that results in fear of violence or serious alarm or distress in the mind of such person, or interferes with the mental peace of such person, commits the offense of stalking. So here is a clear definition of how you stalk a person, in how your action results into stalking under the Indian Penal Code, and that can provided that course of conduct will not amount to stalking if the person who pursued it shows that it was pursued for the purpose of preventing or detecting crime, and the person accused of stalking had been entrusted with the responsibility of prevention or detention of crime by the state, or that it was pursued under any enactment of rule of law to comply with any condition or requirement imposed by any person under enactment, or that in the particular circumstances the pursuit of the course of conduct was reasonable. Whoever commits the offense described in 354D, which is the offense of stalking, shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which shall not be less than 1 year, but shall extend to 3 years, and shall also be liable to fine. Now, when you look at this law, all you can see are loopholes here and there. This law, yes, it is a safeguard. It helps women. It makes them much more stronger and much more confident online, because you have a law right next to you, standing for you. But as you see, especially with the punishment, it says less than 1 year and more than which can result to 3 years too. After the person gets bail, or if a person gets out of the jail for say example 3 months, 2 months, if the person has gone to jail for this offense and feels so serious, coming from a very patriarchal society where the men want to show you that you mean nothing, they can very easily show that the law means nothing to them either. There have been reported cases where men who have gone into jail for stalking have come out and committed much heinous crimes with the women who reported them. So the security of the women here who report these crimes is the talk of the town. It is the question that every woman asks herself. For example, when I go to my Facebook page and I go to my messages, my other messages, I have hundreds of messages from people I don't know, and they're so lurid in nature. Does that mean I would go back to all of these 100 people and report them? No, obviously, it's very hectic for me. What people are talking about right now is that instead of giving us a law, we need a preventive system. For example, preventive online system where whatever we are doing can be done in a very anonymous way. The government nowadays has a very strong policy of shutting down networks, blocking people's account. Why can't it use to block these accounts? Why are they so stubborn on blocking accounts where people are voicing their expression? And when it comes to stalking, you do not have any such strong opinion about it or strong action that you can take there. Furthermore, yes, this is a very woman centric law and it is good for women. At least we have something now instead of 2008 to 2012, where there was no mention of stalking, even. There was just some indication. But now we have an actual word of stalking where acid attack is a criminal is can you can be tried in a criminal court for it, and it's an offense. It's a very good women centric law. However, this law is not gender neutral. It can be used by other gender to discriminate the other gender. It is not a very male centric law, or it's not a very neutral centric law where both the parties are protected. Yes, the crimes reported are majorly by women and not by men, because if you go into the psychology of it, if a male reports a stalking, I mean, we come from a country where we do not expect or accept rapes happening to men. Imagine if a man goes to a police station putting a complaint against a woman who has stalked him. He will be laughed at, because that's how patriarchal we are and that's how misogynist we are. We feel that men cannot be harassed and women can only be harassed because that's what they're made for. Moving forward, here, the section says that monitoring of a woman's use of internet attracts a charge of stalking. Mere monitoring could also be you mere liking her Facebook page. It could amount to anything. And the section which says that it could be intrusive to her mental peace is as draconian in nature as 66A is. It's as draconian in nature as Article 66A is. Who knows what can be intrusive to somebody's mental peace? This vagueness of laws makes it very draconian and very liable to be, uh, very liable to be oppressed. The monitoring concept here should be of only private things. When you go on Facebook and you post something, if somebody comments and posts on it, you have made that thing public. That thing is not private, it's public in nature. So what many people are saying, that instead of making this thing about the entire Facebook, the entire Twitter thing, because people follow each other, like stuff online, instead of making a fool out of this law where people are going and putting charges on each other because somebody liked their picture or whatever, let's make it a serious law where stalking is taken as a real crime and not made a fool out of. If your private chats or private content is being circulated, for example, what Rajat talked about, your private images are being circulated, that is a crime. There are certain things that can be handled yourself which are not really stalking in nature. You cannot, misuse the due force of law. You cannot misuse the provisions that are being given to, and you cannot misuse them when the law does not let you to misuse them. The law here is a very vague in nature, and it is made for a very ideal society. But we do not live in an ideal society right now. We have much graver issues to sort first, and then comes to stalking. In the sense they have come on it right now. This law needs to be very gender neutral in nature, because it doesn't anywhere says that only women can be stalked. Men can be stalked too, and this law can actually be misused by many people against men, because there is no provision which protects them here. So that's all I would like to say about this, the law that surrounds it. And also, I would like to say that when you're online, you should realize the way you move yourself when you're offline, with all the precautions, with all the sense you put into your expression of your movement. The same way you should put a sense into the expression you display on online too. If somebody is behaving in a manner which you feel is intrusive to your well-being, yes, you can report them, but then you should understand to what level is that being intrusive to you. As a woman, you have the power to decide if you're being harassed or not, and not make fool of the due process of the law, or not in vengeance or in revenge. If somebody posts something, you call it stalking. That is not stalking. That is mere advocacy and discussion that happens on Facebook and Twitter posts. There are much serious things that amount to stalking, which are your pictures being circulated, your numbers being circulated. Those are crimes we need to take into task. And looking at the process and the processes of law, how they follow in our country, we really need serious cases out there, so that the government does not waste more time as much as it is right now, and people get the justice they want. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you learned or got to know something new.
Thank you so much, Fakira, for this wonderful, really comprehensive uh, mapping of the law around the issue. But I would sort of like to broaden the issue here and go so far as to say that I personally am also beginning to question the fact that I think it's just stalking. We need to, because we were just discussing that there are the boundaries between offline and online avenues and spaces are diminishing, and there are new platforms that are being created. So I would say that I think it's time that we just call it stalking and not just cyber stalking. So my point earlier, when I was saying that the laws that already exist, we have talked about this in other webinars as well, when we were talking about freedom of association, assembly, and free expression, is that the problems sorry, sorry for those. I think I'll just continue. Can you hear me? Okay. Back? All right. Thank you, guys. So I think I lost my train of thought. The point was that basically, I think the laws that protect us offline should just extend to online arena, and if it's an issue of a threat which is being observed online per se, but it's not cyber stalking, it's just stalking at the end of the day, be it happening on offline or online area. And so I would say that when Fakira was talking about this law not having a specific section on cyber stalking, I think that it's also a good thing, because you see that the kind of threats and issues we are facing these days are changing, and there are new issue, then we'll not have enough, then we'll not have, can you hear me? Am I audible? All right. So I think there is something going on with the audio. I'm really sorry about that. So I got distracted again. I was talking about how, okay, I think I'll just take a minute and decide what I was going to talk about. Yeah, stalking, right? But the fact that yeah, we need laws that are broad and that are gender neutral. That was a very important point that you've highlighted there, Fakira, that the laws are not, they sort of create an inherent bias towards the fact that, or towards the notion that stalking can only harm women. Majorly women are harmed and they're targeted, but it's also men. For example, vulnerable communities, minority communities use online spaces more and more these days to associate, to find people. For example, gay men use online dating sites, and it helps them to meet new people and to find associations and to find groups, support groups, and all of that. Now, but what happens is that because they have websites that facilitate this point, but they also have problems such as there are people who make fake profiles and they sort of harass them, blackmail them into outing them to their families or to their friends, and they don't let them be anonymous. And there have been cases in the past where because we have section 377, which makes same-sex criminal, so what happens is that there have been cases where policemen have made fake profiles online to sort of trap gay men and to sort of ask them to come and meet them out from the dating site, and they sort of decide on a meeting, and then they just catch them, they arrest them. And so these kind of issues also take place. So this is why I was sort of pointing out to the fact that the laws should be broad enough to accommodate these kind of issues. So while it is good that the law should recognize that there are certain issues, but I still don't personally think that the law should specifically have sections on these kind of things, because then there are emerging issues and they need to be accommodated as well. So I think a broader language is important, but at the same time, recognizing that there are such issues existing and they need special attention is also important. So moving on from here, I would like Rajat to again maybe come back to the point of how we can maybe protect ourselves online, and to how you can avoid being cyber stalked and what kind of measures you can take. Rajat, over to you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm good. Yeah. Thanks, Shivani. No, so I just wanted to add one or two things, just sort of picking up from the point of what Shivani was talking about, the dangers that individuals within the LGBTQ community face, particularly with regards to threats and so on and so forth. I know this is not an India-specific example, the one that I'm about to give you, but it's still a very, very poignant sort of short documentary that was created, a short film, by this media outlet called Vice, V-I-C-E. So Vice made a series called Blackout, which looks at, of course, the way that free speech is being impacted and is sort of under attack across the world. And one of the more interesting videos that they had created was actually an exploration of what it is like to be gay in Pakistan, in which, of course, they had talked about an example where there was this support group for within the LGBTQ community that was on Facebook, and suddenly a lot of people of that community started getting murdered. So, of course, the organizer, the moderator of the community, immediately deleted everything and removed the group off Facebook. But later it was found that there was a person who did create fake profiles and who did engage with these individuals on this group, make plans for meeting them, meet with them in the real world, have sex with them, and then kill them. And of course, this person said that he was preventing the spreading of filth across Pakistan. While there may not be such drastic scenarios present in India, there is still a latent air of discrimination and a latent air of discomfort that individuals within the community must feel. So there are ways, and this sort of brings me circling back to the next bit, which is the sort of major ways that you can protect yourself while you're online. One of the ways to do so is, of course, just it's very simple. It's think before you post. The internet does not forget. This is something that everyone really knows. Anyone who engages on the internet usually ends up finding out whether it's a good way or the really difficult way. So it's always very important for individuals to think before they post, and also to think before they click. Many times you'll have cases where, and this is, I mean, this is not necessarily relevant to the issue of cyber stalking, but it is issue to no? What I'd like to just sort of, oh no, I'm getting a network issue sign again. Is it back? Am I on? Okay. Yeah, okay, because this, I'm back. Oh my lord. Okay, so anyway, please check out Digital Security Toolkit, Digital Security First Aid Kit. This is by the Association of, for Progressive Communications, APC. And of course, check out Security in a Box, which is a really good resource for materials for people who are interested in protecting themselves online. I'm not gonna go on because network's getting really moody. I don't think it likes me. So I'm gonna pass it on to Shivani, and I'm gonna disconnect because this network is really bad. Getting any point across is quite.
Thank you, Rajat. And there has been a problem with the connection, I suppose. So I would, I think I'm not audible. Not audible. It's back? Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
All right. I think I'll just have to close up. I am not sure if I'm audible and I'm live yet again. But thank you for this discussion, and I hope that you've had enriching experience watching our webinars, and you can always get in touch with us if there's any questions that you have and anything that you'd like to share. Thank you. Thanks a lot.